Talking 5 love languages, right? This is week 4 of 5, and for some reason I forgot first service to do review of what we're talking about here. We all have a primary emotional love language, and it's one of the 5 we've been talking about. So you have it. It's words of affirmation. You can read. It's one of those 5. What was the second thing on here? We all have love tanks. This is from the book, The 5 Love Languages, right? This is not my original stuff. I'd like to claim it, but I can't. But I don't know why I looked at the Bible. It's not on the Bible. I don't have the book. We have love tanks. That kind of gauges how loved we feel based on our love language, and a full tank leads to a healthy relationship. So the goal is, if you know someone with a particular love language we're covering on this particular week, that you fill their tank, because that communicates to them how much you love them and appreciate them and how important they are in your life. Today, we're talking acts of service. Acts of service. And this one's easier to talk about because it's just part of the DNA of a believer, right? You're a follower of Christ. We're called to serve. It's throughout all the New Testament. It's really throughout the Bible, but it comes up all over the place in the New Testament, the idea of service. To Christian slaves, Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 6, serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not men. Don't fake it. Do it with all your heart. Even if you're a slave, serve wholeheartedly as if you're serving the Lord, not men. In Galatians, Paul tells believers not to be caught up in the sinful nature. He says, rather, serve one another in love. Pretty ingenious. If I'm more focused on how I can serve you, or especially if maybe my spouse has the love language of these acts of service, if I'm more focused on that, maybe I won't get caught up in some of the worldly things that I might get caught up on. It's pretty good thought there. Peter writes about spiritual gifts in 1 Peter, and he says in chapter 4, each one should use whatever the spiritual gift, whatever God has gifted you with, each one should use whatever gift he's received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. And in John 13, probably the best example of service in Scripture is Jesus getting down and washing the feet of his disciples. I mean, here he is, the Son of God, and he, if anyone should be washing feet, it should be the disciples washing his feet. And he says, no, I'm going to wash your feet. Peter kind of pushes back, says, no way, Jesus. And he's like, oh no, yeah, this is going down. I'm trying to teach you something here. And it says in chapter 13 of John, verses 12 on to 17, do you understand what I have done for you? He's washed their feet. Do you call me teacher and Lord? Rightly so. That's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I've set an example for you that you should do as I have done for you. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. See, it's really simple. It's a basic but also major theme in Scripture. If you're a follower of Jesus, one of the things that followers of Jesus do is they serve. The more he has control of your life, the more you are motivated to serve other people, because you serve Jesus through serving other people. Now, we're pretty fortunate here at Pathway because we have a ton of people who are heavily involved in serving others. I mean, I'm sure hopefully every church can say that, but we just believe in serving people here. We have teachers and nursery workers. Most churches, of course, have that. People who serve donuts. Y'all like the donuts? I don't need any donuts. We're extreme examples of health. But for all those you unhealthy people, y'all like the donuts? There's people serving those for you. Coffee, vacuuming the floor, cleaning up messes, leading ministries. If you spend any time just watching the little TV out there in the cafe of all the different things, service things that people do, you see all kinds of examples of times people have taken personal vacation time to go to North Carolina and help the hurricane relief, to go to Oklahoma City in that area, hitting the suburbs there after a deadly tornado hit a few years ago. We went there and spent a week down there doing that. We've gone to Rosebud Reservation, another reservation in Arizona. I mean, we've done tons of stuff. We have a team that goes every year to Zimbabwe. That's not a vacation. That's not like a pleasure trip. It is a service trip. People are tired when they get back because we're working people pretty hard. We roof people's houses. We feed neighborhood seniors on a monthly basis, people who just come in and get a meal from people, just serving them. We've given locally to homeless people and unexpected mothers and missions that support that. Instrument players who come and practice and rehearse and work on their instrument and hone their craft so that they can help lead in worship and serve you and me in that way. These are examples of followers of Jesus who are serving. Okay, service is a very basic theme of Scripture. They've chosen to live a life of service, and that's really cool. That's only part of what we're talking about today. It's a little more targeted, what we're talking about in this this acts of service today. How many of you that have read the book and took the test, how many of you have gifts of service? Why am I trying to say gifts of service? Acts of service. This is a pretty common one. I had several in the first service that had that. If you have that as your love language, you just feel more loved when people are doing the little things for you, to serve you, to help your life get better. It's not like you're a prima donna. You don't expect everybody to serve you, but it just fills your tank. If someone does something, you're just like, oh, that's so nice. You just feel loved when that happens. So acts of service in context of marriage would be simply you as a spouse doing the little things that you know your spouse wants done. Taking out the trash, that's a little act of service. Making the bed, feeding the dog, washing the dishes, dusting the shelves, filling their gas with car. I mean, you could go on forever. When Cheryl and I were young, a young couple, one of the shining examples of marriage for us was her grandparents, Pat's parents, Howard and Bertha. And he was this servant to her that always stuck out to me because he was way better at it than me. Because I grew up in this feminist movement, and I'm like, yeah, Cheryl, do your own thing, what's up, which maybe I still have that a little bit. I've tried to learn to kind of serve her better, but they would come and visit and she would, come out of the car like the queen and walk around and start talking to people, and he'd be like loading up his hands with all the luggage and everything, and like she never ever touched the luggage. I mean, he brought it all in. I mean, I helped. I think, hopefully, I did. Like I said, that's not my thing. I probably watched him thinking, man, that's really great. He's doing that. His wife's lucky. Cheryl's not so lucky. But that stuck out to me that he would take all the luggage in and situate it, and then when it was time to leave, he'd take it all back while she sat there talking to everybody, blah, 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 saying everything, and I thought, man, he's really serving her. And I hope I picked up some of that stuff from him, but that was a great example that we had in just two people that we knew that meant a lot to us. Acts of service requires a little bit of thought. It takes a little bit of energy. You have to engage your mind, when you do that and you put that into motion, it just communicates to that person, I love you. Bertha felt loved when he served her in this way. Now, it's important to remember, if you're married to someone whose love language is acts of service, you can tell them you love them all day long, but they won't hear it unless you serve them in some way, unless you do something to show it to them. You can spend all the quality time you want with them, and that's great, and they'll appreciate it, but they won't feel loved unless you do some type of act of service. The other love languages, you could bring home gifts every day, really expensive ones that you're thinking, how could they're going to know I love them? They're not hearing I love you from that. They hear it when you do the little things. It's more important for you to wash the dishes than to bring home a diamond, right? Okay, maybe that's a bad example. but they'll take the gift too. But it's the service that really communicates love to them. That's when they feel loved. You roll up your sleeves, you get involved, and you do something that needs to be done. Now again, this isn't them being selfish or lazy or demanding only yellow M&Ms in a bowl, or it's not that. It's just how they're wired. It's just how they hear that you love them. So what I've done is I've come up with a few pointers today that will help you as a person if you're married to someone who has the love language of acts of service. Here's some things to remember. First of all, forget the stereotypes. And maybe we're kind of past that as a culture a little bit, but I think it's still ingrained in us in a lot of ways. Even before my time, there was the good old show, Leave It to Beaver, Leave It to Beaver, all those shows where they, the wife stayed home and cooked and cleaned, and that's all, and that's what she did, and the husband would go off to work and do his thing, and then he'd come home. His role at home was to eat the meal that the wife had cooked and to read the newspaper, and then usually give some great bit of wisdom, at the end of the show that we all could learn from. And that was kind of set up how the family was supposed to be. In acts of service, now some of that's not good or bad. I'm not debating roles. I'm just saying when it comes to acts of service, you got to kind of throw all that out and just do whatever it takes to serve your spouse. Forget the stereotype. Because you're a guy doesn't mean you don't have to do laundry, or that you can't do laundry, or you can't do the dishes. Because you're a woman doesn't mean you can't climb on the roof and put on new shingles. We're getting new shingles next year, Cheryl. I'm going to see. When Danielle was in preschool, so little thing, I would take Fridays off, and that was like our time that we spent out and hung out together. And I always thought part of my major role in life is twofold: one, to prepare her for heaven and to see Jesus first, face to face, and secondly, to prepare her to be an adult in the adult world. And I thought, she's 4 years old, she could learn how to mop, right? And I don't want to do it, so. We made a game out of it. We'd bring all the furniture out of the kitchen. We lived in an old house, a little linoleum floor, and we'd bring all the furniture out, and we'd line the chairs up. So it was our bus. We'd imagine going on these fantastic trips and everything. We'd have our fun. But then he'd be like, well, it's time to clean the floor. We're like, okay, we'll do that too. That came with it. So she learned how to sweep and how to mop, and then we waxed the floor and everything. And it was a lot of fun and created some great memories. But the best part of that was when Cheryl would come home that day. I don't know, you probably got to the point you expected it, because it was about every week. We did this maybe every other week. I didn't want to overwax it, but it was just to see her eyes light up and say, oh, you cleaned the floor. Like she could see herself on the floor. It was just this cool little thing. So I was getting to hang out with my daughter and doing an act of service. And it was showing my wife that we loved her. And it was fun. A second thing is become a hunter. Become a hunter. Each of you should not only look into your own interests, but also the interests of others. So this is you and me, we're looking, we're searching, we're hunting for ways to serve one another. 1 Corinthians 10:24, nobody should seek his own good, but the good of others, seeking it out. Again, I just entered the hunting world just a few years ago, and it is not at all what I thought it was. I thought hunting was like, Elmer Fudd, you grab a gun and start walking around and start shooting things. This is how it works, right? And it wasn't. That's not at all how it is. A hunter will go out and I haven't done this yet because I'm usually with people who are experienced. They've already done this. They're out seeking. They're searching. They're scouting areas to see where they're going to go when they hunt. So there's a lot of intentionality. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of searching. And they're going to different areas. They're going to see what's there. We're seeing the land, see the layout, and all that stuff. And then you go like really at a terrible early morning hours, at least who I go with, and we go out and when it's still dark and you're hiding out in the middle of nowhere, like turkey hunting will be I guess duck hunting's coming up. Anyway, you're hiding and you're kind of waiting. The whole point is there's a lot of preparation. You got to get the right kind of ammunition. There's all this stuff that goes into it. Hunting that I had no idea was a part of that. It is advanced thought and being very intentional. If your spouse's love language is acts of service, the point is do some searching, do some looking. What is it they're looking to have done? How can you serve them? What can you do? What are needs that need to be filled in their life? It's going to take a little work. Maybe walking around and say, hey, remember that project we started 5 years ago? I never did put the floorboards on. I suppose they want that done, or whatever it might be. Start searching and looking so you can do it. Boy, the paint sure is looking bad in here. Take a day off and surprise them and paint the room, or grab their car keys and get gas in the car. I don't know what I said before. Grab some steaks on the way home and cook their favorite meal. Whatever, do all that. Next thing is listen closely. When we get this verse down, we'll quit using it. But this comes up a lot in my life. James 1:19. My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak, and slow to become angry. we tend to reverse that. We'll speak first, and then we don't really listen very well, and we're not paying attention, and then it causes issues. And if you listen, right, really listen, your spouse is probably telling you what acts of service they want done, what needs to be done. It's kind of funny. It's been almost 30 years now, but I remember Mother's Day 1990. It was our first week, first Mother's Day at the church in Atlantic when we lived there. I moved there, or we started preaching in January, and it was probably like March-ish we moved there, and that Mother's Day was, whenever that was, pretty soon. And it was a disaster. I mean, it was absolutely terrible. I had planned this kind of humorous, funny sermon about, nagging wives of the Bible, like Delilah. You never tie my hair. You don't tell me your secrets. And I thought it was going to be great, And what I did not think through was just a few weeks earlier, one of the founding members of that church, who was a mother and well-loved, dearly respected person, had passed away tragically. And I knew that because we were still living in Des Moines. We were in transition. It happened here. So I was able to be involved in the hospital and be involved with the family. And I knew how tragic it was. What I didn't take into account was how emotional Mother's Day would be just a few weeks later. And what I didn't know was the family members had planned a 20-minute super emotional eulogy, basically, on Mother's Day about their mom that everybody knew. So everybody's in tears. And everybody's, just emotionally wrecked. And I'm trying to say, hey, that didn't go well. It didn't go well at all. Now, in addition to that, not only was I tanking the thing, there was a group of middle school, high schoolers they decided to bring up to honor their moms, right? And one of the students, this is the part that really sticks out, besides how I flopped it, one of the students steps up to the microphone, and he just says, yeah, my mom's a nag, okay? And, and he just kept emphasizing all the nagging she does. And everybody laughed, thought it was great, ha, ha, ha. It was a bright moment in the day. And she was sinking lower and lower in her chair. Now, that family didn't make it. Honestly, here's my guess as a non-counselor guy. I think she probably had gifts of service as a love language, and there were two boys and a dad who didn't listen. And they called it nagging, but what she was doing over and over was informing them, this is how you can love me. And they didn't. They thought it was unimportant. They shoved it off. They thought, that's your job, not ours. I don't know what they thought, but they didn't do it. So what they're hearing is nag, 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 and they're telling the whole church, yeah, mom's a nag, she's terrible, I can't believe it's a woman. And she's just feeling more and more and more empty in a relationship. The relationship ultimately blew up. I don't even know what happened to her. They just disappeared and went into somewhere. And I think it could have been fixed by simply them listening and saying, mom really wants the dishes washed, right? See what I'm saying? Just listen. Your spouse is probably telling you how they can feel loved, especially if it's acts of service. They're probably communicating regularly with you. Listen closely to what your spouse has to say. A last one is to act before they ask. It's one thing for you to hunt for ways to serve them, and maybe even to come up with a list or an idea of what you're going to do. It's another thing to actually get it done. Get it done. Do it. You have to act on it. Actually do it before they have to tell you. Now, it still counts if they tell you, boy, I sure would like that done, and you get it done, but it's even more powerful if you didn't have to ask them, if they didn't have to ask you. To engage your mind, go on the hunt, listen, and then act. Get it done before they have to tell you. The first person who smells the stinky diaper, go ahead and change it. There's this game that parents play where you both pretend like you're not smelling it. and you're just waiting for the other to give in, I mean, you'll have an opportunity in a couple hours to do it again. Just go ahead and get that thing done. Just take that's an act of service. Take the initiative. Getting up from the table and say, hey, I'm going to get the dishes started. Now, we live in a modern world. Usually it's a matter of throwing them in the dishwasher or something, but it depends on what you're washing. You might need to wash some pans or something by hand. Just go ahead and do it. Or folding a pile of clothes that are sitting there waiting for each other to fold or do something with. Just do it. Or stopping by the grocery store, picking up some needed supplies. There's all kinds of ways for you to act before they have to ask you. That communicates love to them. Now, if you have this love language, I have some quick little tips for you that might be helpful to you. Hints if your love language is acts of service. The first one, don't be a nag. I know you're trying to communicate it, and you need to communicate it, but if you have to communicate it too much, there comes a point you're pushing people away rather than inviting them in. So be careful on that. Don't be a nag. It's really simple. Number two, don't be demanding. Okay, love should be freely given. That's this whole idea, this whole love series and love language thing is if the person knows and they want to love you, they're going to do it. You shouldn't have to keep telling them, and you shouldn't be demanding. Shouldn't have to coerce. You shouldn't have to manipulate. Let them love you, right? Communicate it, but then let them do it. And number three, clearly communicate your needs. Maybe you need to make a list. That's what Cheryl and I did a few weeks ago. We went off to Minnesota and made a list. Okay, we're empty nesters now. What's our list? And so we can start working on stuff and we can start checking things off. So we have an actual list now of things that we want to get done around the house. And so it's really clear. It's really simple. I know what's coming ahead. So clearly communicate your needs. And be careful. Like, don't just say, hey, I want a clean house. Especially if it's us dudes, maybe you just need to go out and say, hey, stop leaving your dirty underwear on the floor, all right? I mean, just be real. What is it you're looking for? Pinpoint it and communicate it very clearly. All right? Simple stuff today. All right, here's your assignments. Finish that one thing the spouse has been talking about. You all got it, right? And you already know what it is. I don't have to tell you what it is. There's one thing. I'll get to that. Go ahead and finish that. I mean, if it's possible to do it this week. That's the goal. Get working on that. Number two, ask for a list of top 5 projects your spouse wants done. At first I had 10, and then this morning I changed it to 5. I thought, man, 10's a lot of projects. 5 can be a lot of projects. It depends on the projects. So just find out what they are. That's the whole point of this, to get you communicating and talking when you leave here. So ask for a list of top 5 projects that your spouse wants done. And then so you got the big picture and then the little picture. Ask your spouse what their top 5 regular acts of service would be. Like, what is it? What are the 5 things? Oh, I just wish you'd take the garbage out. Okay, I'll get it done. I won't wait until you have to ask me every week. Find out what that is and go ahead and engage in that.